Welcome everyone to Unlocking My Potential. I'm here today with Skylar Hoover, who will be sharing a lot of her interests and also background experiences, especially with some background in safety and trust, project management, some technical communication with diverse people, and her big change with her career that happened just recently. So, very excited to hear all about it. So, hello and welcome.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you for hosting this podcast. I'm so excited to be on.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate it. Excited to have you here. So let's start with a little bit of you, just a little background about yourself, anything that you'd like to share to begin with.
Sure. Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Skylar Hoover. Um, I am currently on a career break, but I heard Natalie was hosting this podcast kind of aimed at people who might be in college and are curious about knowing what people that majored in STEM, and especially women, might have done in the future. And so I just wanted to share my path since there's not a lot of clear direction. You might hear about certain careers, like you could be a project manager, a software developer, you could be a mathematician, you could be really anything, but there's certain, I like to call them lily pads that you hop on when you go to each career step versus just one path. So I was really excited to kind of share my interesting path since it's gone a couple different ways.
That's amazing. I love how you share the different paths of like STEM, because I feel like when people think of STEM, they think of like, scientists or just like engineers for the most part, I would say. But there's so many other ways to go about it, which is very interesting and such an awesome way to start the conversation. Can you share a little bit more about what actually sparked your interest into the STEM world? How did you get from that little spark at that age into, actually going into a college major and everything?
Yeah, happy to share. So I would put it this way, ever since I was a little kid, I'm an only child, so I spent a lot of time on my computer or playing video games, and then I ended up making friends and playing games with them as well, and my mom. And I was raised by a single mom too, so I was just chilling by myself a lot of the time. So I ended up really loving computers. They were a bit different when I grew up versus now. It was literally just like a big blocky desktop that was gray. There wasn't tablets or anything like that yet, but I spent a lot of time on the computer. And so from there, I found my interests in that. And then in high school, I thought it would be really cool to focus on computer engineering. And then when I was graduating from high school, I also graduated with an associate's at the same time. And there was a college called Florida Polytechnic University that I hadn't heard of, but my friend made it in and he showed me the acceptance letter was a USB. I'm like, that is so cool. So I started researching some of the degrees there, and I noticed that it was a STEM only school. And so I was most interested in computer science. So I went ahead and applied and I made it in for that major, and I stayed there for a year. And you'd think that once you commit to a college, you kind of stay there for the entire time, but that's not always the case. I ended up taking a bunch of programming classes. I made it through calculus. I passed calculus. I'm really bad at math, which thinking about computer engineering, you kind of need math. So I was pretty bad at the logical side, but I took a technical writing course at the school, and I found that a lot of the people struggled around me, but I was really excelling, and I found it super natural for me to document everything, to get everybody on the same page, and to make everything concise. And I just found that I really loved it. So then, since that wasn't a major at the school, and I'm pretty sure it's not at this time, and I was kind of skewing more towards a STEM-centric topic, but also I wanted to focus on the communication side as well, I transferred to UCF, and from there I was majoring in IT. So I was still taking STEM heavy courses, like programming classes still, and computer architecture, things like that. So I kind of had that under my belt, and I took another technical communication course, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love it so much. And there was it was Dr. JD Applin, he was the instructor there, and he ran technical communicators organization there, and I really had a great time with everybody that was in there. So I made that my major. So it was, instead of complete major switching, it ended up being, okay, I really like this one thing, but I'm not sure if I can focus on that fully because I didn't know a lot about how profitable it was, if it was an actual career. I just thought it was a random course. But in the end, it was a career. So I ended up majoring in that, minoring in information technology, and graduating.
That's awesome. Explain, I guess, little bit to me on like what is a major in technical communication? What are some of like the career paths that you can even go about that? Because I've never heard of that before, to be honest. Before like having this conversation with you, and of course I knew a little bit just before this interview, but that was so interesting to me. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, there's so many, like technical paths, but I never thought about like, okay, a communication path that you can actually go within like the STEM education, or like a communications technical path, writing and all of that. I'm like, how do you connect both of those with technology? Can you give a big background on that?
Yeah, of course. And as a communicator, I probably should have started with that off the bat, but technical communication is a very broad concept. So basically what you learn in the courses is how first kind of to write instruction manuals, then you can do proposals, you can do user guides. So then you start focusing on the aspects of technology that need to be documented. So say you are programming, you need someone kind of that, in case you have any future programmers, you need somebody to document what's going on, what each thing is inside of the program, since the programmer is usually focused on programming.
Honestly, it's just like trying to understand, like a little bit of, but you just explained the way they explained the description that you just gave, the definition of, with the manuals, with everything. That kind of makes sense a little bit more in my mind. But I think at the same time, um, in a sense, I thought that was more of like HR related. Does that make sense? Because you know how HR creates a lot of the documentation and everything for just the company overall. To me, I never made a connection of like, wow, we have technical like information technology people that do actually the communication and like the writing styles. That is really cool, honestly, because I love writing, love it, love it, love it. Uh, but I never even thought about how to connect both at the same time. I think I kind of got stuck in the mindset of, okay, I'm in this university already doing this major. I should go ahead and finish it up and then use my writing as a hobby or, a side project. But I'm kind of excited and I'm glad that you went with your gut and you saw like, okay, I'm really good at this and I really like this. Let me explore what other options are out there and find a way to connect within a technical world. That's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and at every single company it's different, which is why I
Mhm.
said it's super broad, and there's different needs everywhere. So for example, when I worked at Lockheed, I focused on IT outreach. So for example, there's a new Windows update, and without a technical communicator or some type of communication in the middle, people that might work on really important infrastructure or have really important things on their computer, you want to make sure that when you push that update out, they're not losing anything or it's not disrupting workflow. So it's a really important kind of gear in the machine to keep everything going without a hard stop in the middle. And so that's typically what my flavor of technical communication has been pushing out email communications for extremely technical concepts, because you kind of need somebody that's a liaison between the end user and somebody actually working with the technology to kind of translate that over. So that's what I specialize in. And so I also, at Discord, I started as a trust and safety analyst. So a lot of what we did was making sure that Discord's communities were safe. We dealt with reports coming in from users about harmful things that were on the platform, but we also had proactive measures that we would work on. And so from there, switching from IT outreach at Lockheed, which is communicating only to end users internally, to responding to end users dealing with certain harms on the platform. I thought that I wouldn't be able to use technical communication, but then lo and behold, I was able to still. So I started as an analyst at Discord for trust and safety, responding as a generalist to all different harm types. And some things in trust and safety might be a bit triggering for certain topics, so I don't want to dive too deep just in case. But for example, there's general harassment, there's cybercrime, there's hate speech, there's exploitation and child exploitation, and all these different harms that can happen on a platform that you want to make sure there's a good team handling that on the background. So that's kind of what I did. So I was responding to all of these things, aligning it with Discord's policies and procedures. And then I ended up having a passion for minor safety and exploitative content. So from an analyst role, I hopped over to the minor safety team. And from there, I was responding to things, but we also have user guides that, since trust and safety is such an evolving industry, quickly would become outdated, right? So different things were updated on the back end in the technologies we were using to respond to the users. Different policies would change for the language we needed to respond to the users with. And so there's still that liaison that was needed in the middle. So I kind of raised my hand. I'm like, hey, I actually have a technical communication background. I'd love to help with some of this documentation on the back end and kind of keep that fresh. And so you can kind of take your base skill, and if you find a need for it at the company, raise your hand, let them know that you can do that.
That's amazing. Wow, that is so awesome. That is definitely something, especially that you mentioned that you work at Discord, right? Which is a platform that you do have people of all over the places, all different countries, ages, and everything. That was also something that I've always kept in my mind. Like, how do these platforms keep the community safe, keep the platform safe as much as possible? Um, and it's amazing. It's amazing that you were part of that you had a passion for it, that you just raised your hand and you say, hey, I have some experience with this. I think, I'll be good for this role. And you just jumped in and took over on that. And like you mentioned, that is also something that I think we don't think about it enough of, okay, you have this documentation of the proper way of doing things, the proper way of communicating it, but you don't keep in mind of how like that is constantly changing. So to me, it's also like, okay, you have these documents, but it gets outdated so fast. And that's something that it never crossed my mind of like, okay, you actually need a whole team and you need like a whole person that is really good at this, that can keep up with making sure that documentations are properly for the individuals based on all the changes that are happening around us, right? So that is amazing. That's awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad that you were part of that group, that you're part of that team. And I'm sure you had really good impact, very, very positive impact into the company and the role that you're doing. That's awesome. Going from there, I kind of want to take a step back before I jump into your career break, because I think that's going to be a whole topic. But I want to take a little bit of a step back and just talk about a little bit of the program that you participated at UCF, which was the college work experience. Can you just describe a little bit what the program is? How did it help you to get, your internship? And how did you go from being a college student to an internship to your full-time job? Just a little bit of that path.
Yeah, of course. And that's a really good question. So most universities, I would assume every university has some type of connection with external companies where maybe it might be a super competitive program, but you can use that to then hop over. So when I was in college, I knew that I needed an internship. I'm pretty sure there was an internship requirement to graduate. And so I'm searching all over the place. I'm going to the network opportunities in person. We had career fairs where the companies would come out. You could introduce yourself and kind of hand out your resume too. And so I was kind of having interviews all the time, and I had a couple of opportunities from there. But then through the technical writing group I was in at UCF, they mentioned the CWEP program, which is the college work experience program. And that was with Lockheed Martin. And they had it was part-time, and they were more introductory roles to kind of dip your toe into the industry that you're in, but also make a good impact. So after I heard about that, I went ahead, and I believe it was through Handshake. It was a program called Handshake at UCF. So they listed things there, and I submitted my resume, and you never know if you'll get a call back, but I did. And then I went in for the interview and I met my boss at the time, who was Lucretia, and then my coworker who kind of had a mentor role for me too. She was the lead of the IT outreach team, Christine. And so I ended up making it on the team. And from there, I did the internship. And since that is a program that's kind of hand in hand with UCF, afterwards, if you do well and they have a budget and space for you, you'll be able to go in full time. And so for after the CWEP program, they were able to do that, and I was able to do that as well. So I signed on full time and I stayed there for 3 years.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And do you know if they have that program? You said like it's a partnership with Lockheed and UCF, but is there just with Lockheed or through like the handshake? Was there other companies and other different positions and involvement a little bit as well there?
Yeah, I know everything changes so much, and this was like 6.5 years ago. I'm pretty sure Handshake is still at UCF. So if you go there, University in Central Florida in Orlando, that's what that is. If somebody doesn't go to UCF, but yeah, check that out. But I'm pretty sure the program still exists, but the specific namesake of that program is just with Lockheed, I believe.
Okay.
But my top tip would definitely be to scrub all of the resources that you can at your college. Talk to people who are in your major, see what's going on with that. And so talking to people in my major and joining the it was Future Technical Communicators. I joined that organization, and then I found out about it, and just going to all the events that you can, because you never know what nugget of information you might get or hear about a new opportunity. I spent so much time going to these and just learning things, but not actually working at certain places. But then you kind of get an eye out of what's going on in your industry and also what opportunities might be there. So
That's amazing. No, I appreciate you mentioning that. That is so cool. I love how one UCF had the program, and I'm sure they still probably do. Like you mentioned, 6.5 years ago, it was a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure a lot of other universities are bringing other programs. That has been a big focus that I've seen in a lot of universities, just bringing um, different programs with different companies and different ways of getting students to participate in internships and just getting their feet wet into the industry. Because a big issue that I've noticed right now, it's there's a lot of companies that want an entry level position, right? They post those jobs and then you go through the description and entry level is like 1 to 2 years of experience. And you're like, that is not entry level. That is, an actual little bit of experience. So I'm glad universities still have programs like that. They kind of give you that experience that you need for some of the entry level positions. So that's awesome. And then you mentioned that you stay, Lockheed for about 3 years of full time. And then you made the move to the Discord. So how was that transition? What made you change a little bit from one company to another? How did that process go?
yeah, happy to answer. And yeah, to piggyback after what you just said about the industry changing so much and the job market changing, it is really, really difficult, especially right now. I'm hearing that there's a lot less opportunities for new grads, a lot less internships. I know that wallets are kind of closing at companies, and they're like, we're not going to invest as much into college students or new hires. So, again, don't give up. Keep trying and keep going to all the events that you can. Keep putting your name out there and try to keep on top of trends. But you never know, if that'll work. So, but just don't give up would be my tip, no matter what the industry looks like, because you have value and you have a specific skill set and you have your strengths that would be very useful, especially if you have an education and you've been studying and focusing on a certain topic or industry. So don't give up. So going back to Discord transition, I loved my team so much at Lockheed and I loved working there. I learned so much about so many different topics. So I learned about graphic design, sending out those mass emails to 10,000 people. That's so scary. But then as you do it over and over, you get more confident. Editing, pushing out articles, creating user guides. I learned so much at Lockheed and working with certain projects to help communicate those and push those along. And I believe that I heard, once you know 80% of a job, it's time to start maybe deciding what you want to do next. So I felt like really comfortable there, and I was totally comfortable to stay. But at the time, the job industry, it was like the very end of 2020 when I started searching, but there was a big boom due to COVID for online communications platforms, and also companies were hiring a lot of people. So it was just kind of like a matter of timing. I had always wanted to work in a gaming centric sphere since, again, as a little kid, that was what I always loved to do in my spare time. And I always love fostering a safe space for people to be able to communicate. So I was like, at first, I applied for other positions at Discord, and I was applying to different companies in that industry just to put myself out there. And I had no connections either. Like, a lot of people might know somebody, and you're like, hey, I even talked to you about getting a reference before, but you're like, hey, like, do you want to give me a reference, or do you want to have a conversation with me about what it's like working there? I had no idea. So it was kind of like, a shot in the dark of if I would be able to get an interview, would the company culture be a good fit? And would it be worth switching over from somewhere that I'm super comfortable and I'm happy, but being uncomfortable again to kind of follow my passion more? So I have no idea how I got an interview. I did for the trust and safety analyst position. And it was a lot different from my CWEP experience at Lockheed. That one, I think I had maybe one or two interviews that were short and in person, and we just got along and it was great. But in tech, sometimes you'll have 5, 6 rounds of interviews, and that was a lot to mentally prep for at the time as well, since I had never experienced anything like that. And so I had gotten an interview. I went through the first round, which was kind of introducing myself. I did a test about trust and safety topics, which I didn't even know what that was before I applied. But after I read the job application or the job requirements, I thought that was the most interesting thing I had ever heard of in my life. I had no idea that existed. And I was like, I need to do this. So I studied up, and a lot of times too in trust and safety, they want people in actual safety backgrounds in the before. Like, for example, on the minor safety team, a lot of people have worked for law enforcement or worked for NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is super great. But I also was able to make it in with my varied background of communication and working in that sphere before. So I made it through, and that's how I kind of got in, was just kind of chasing my passion and hoping to be in an industry that I felt excited about too.
That's amazing. That's awesome. For the test that you mentioned, so it was a test you had to do through your interview process. Did the company let you know that you're gonna have to do, some type of test throughout your interview? Or did you just study and learn, and then that was just part of, the interview as a surprise? Was there preparation? How did that go? Because I've heard of, if you do, for example, like a software engineer position, you apply for them, or any type of position like that, that there's some type of coding involved, most likely one of your interviews is going to be a coding interview where they're going to give you a prompt and you're going to have to code, a solution for the problem. But I've never, I don't have a lot of, I guess, familiarity with the trust and safety. So how was that experience with the test and the interview?
Yeah, so I actually had a really good interview experience at Discord. I believe there was somebody from HR that reached out and gave me a full list of all the steps that would happen in each step of the interview. So first, I knew it would be an introduction, and if I made it through that, I would be able to do a take-home test. And it was not a live test; it was a take-home test. So, but I'll go back to before I even applied for the role. I started hardcore researching trust and safety, researching the industry, where my strengths might lie in that as well. So I kind of came in with that background information, and I was able to apply that to the take-home test as well.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. No, that's awesome. That is awesome that they gave you a whole list too. I don't think a lot of companies do. You kind of go through the first interview and they're like, okay, if you pass, there will be, a second one and third and fourth, and how many interviews are now. But I that's amazing. That's amazing for the company to actually give you step by step of, hey, this is the whole process. So you feel a little bit more ready for it. I feel like most companies just take you by surprise throughout the whole job interview process. So that is really, really exciting. And okay, so after Discord, now you mentioned that you have been on a career break. So if you want to share a little bit of what happened there, what changed your mind from being a full-time employee in the tech companies to taking a break in your career, if you just can go over that a little bit more, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's a good question too. And career break is a really scary thing, as we know, because if you apply for other jobs, now there's a gap in your resume. What's going to be next? What are you going to focus on next? So I stayed at Discord for also 3 years, and I had also a wonderful experience at Discord. The team is incredible. The trust and safety team specifically is incredible. It's a group of extremely empathetic, hardworking, passionate people who are also hilarious and fun, but also really serious about what they do. So that was the hardest thing in the world, was pouring my heart and my skills and my soul into a role and then leaving it. But sometimes you have to do what's best for you. And so what I did was I stepped back. What happened during that role was I was on the minor safety team, and I ended up kind of burning out on dealing with the actual moderation content, because although I was a project manager, I was also an individual contributor at the same time. So focusing on the documentation and working with outsourcing and helping train them up was really awesome. But then dealing with the actual subject matter, I ended up kind of burning out on that. And so there was an organization called the Workplace Wellness Project that Discord has. So there was kind of like therapy for all of the people that work in content moderation at Discord, which was super awesome. I heavily relied on that. Shout out to Stefania. She was my coach. And it just ended up that I couldn't really stay in that role any longer for my own mental health. So instead of pushing further, I ended up just saying, hey, I really appreciate this opportunity, but I'm going to need to take a step back and figure out what's next. So I have this kind of random umbrella of, okay, I have like IT experience, I have technical communication, and now I have child safety, minor safety, and exploitative content experience. So I was like, what do I want to focus on? What can I do with this random umbrella of things? So yeah, it was kind of like burnout, but also knowing that something's not for me anymore. I'm still really passionate about child safety and would love to stay in that sphere in some way, but just not direct content exposure when it comes to that. And so I took a step back for mental health purposes. And then I did have I worked for 5 months at a local organization called the Department of Public Instruction for Wisconsin. And through this time, through all of my career steps, it's been a lot of moving all over the country, because as a lot of people applying for jobs might know, is that a lot of jobs require in person or other aspects of that sort. So I started in Florida, moved to North Carolina for Discord. They were planning on building an office. It didn't really happen. So then everybody just moved back. I moved back to Florida. Then my husband got a job up here in Wisconsin. And so now, ta-da, we've settled here. But then I'm like, okay. So then I went back to my bread and butter, my roots, and I focused on technical writing for a little bit, since I knew that's what I'm good at. So then I ended up doing a contract with them for a few months, and it was really awesome there too. But I still didn't address the burnout I had been experiencing, because right when I left Discord, I was scrambling, applying for other jobs. Like, okay, I don't want to have a gap in my resume. I got to keep going. And even though I'm not dealing with this, the burnout symptoms, I just need to keep going. So I pushed myself, did the contract, and I'm like, okay, I really need to take a step back now for my mental health and physical well-being, which is really hard to say. And it's a big privilege too, because finances are probably the number one aspect in this realm that you need to focus on. But then you also need to focus on yourself, because you won't be able to make money if you're not well. So now I'm taking a career break since the beginning of March, and now it's July. So I've been on a career break to focus on my mental health and physical well-being. So totally taking a reset. I've started personal therapy for the first time, which I've never had a therapist before, like an actual legit one. So that has helped me so much address from square one, like from childhood to things I've experienced, things in the workplace, and then things beyond. I've been able to address those with the therapist. I've been taking care of my physical well-being, going to the doctor, figuring out some of the chronic health issues I've been having that I've been pushing to the wayside because I've been so focused on my career. And also working out. I've been doing a lot of yoga. Shout out to Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. If you ever do yoga, definitely recommend her. So just kind of taking a reset and step back too.
That's
I need all
amazing.
of that.
I think taking a break from your career is one, extremely difficult, but two, it requires, I don't know, like it requires some strength that I don't even know how to have that. So really, really big like prompts to you, honestly, on that. After, being on this break for about 3 months now, how are you feeling? Do you think that the break was necessary? Do you feel a lot better from the whole burned out? I know, um in my own personal experience, I went through burned out for a couple months as well, because I was trying to take on the world with like family and marriage, and I have pets and the house and job, and trying to juggle everything. Like being an adult is just hard, period. Like it's just rough.
Yeah.
You're trying to juggle so many things all together. And going through burnout it's hard. It's rough. For me, I was able to thankfully kind of just have a very honest conversation with my manager of, hey, I have too much on my plate at work, to be fairly honest. This is a lot, because I got involved in so many projects apart from my actual role. Um, and he was great on just removing so many things off my plate, just getting me back into just my role and slowly trying to adjust and trying to learn on how to properly say no to things, not trying to take too much. And, I think being so young in our career, sometimes we want to do everything and we're so excited about all these other opportunities that we say yes, 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 until we get to a point that is like, I literally cannot take it anymore. So shout out to you. I think thoughts have crossed my mind of, what if I just completely take a break and, figure it in a couple months. Have not had the courage to do so, to be fairly honest, but I think that happens in a lot of people's minds, and it requires a lot of strength to do it, to actually take those steps and to put you first, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health and everything, to then figure it out like, okay, this is what I can do afterwards, And of course, like you also mentioned, you are, in a privileged situation. I know there's a lot of people that cannot take those breaks due to the financial constraints. So I'm really glad that you can, that you can take the break, you can take a breather, you can focus on yourself. That you working out, that you're seeing a therapist. I saw a therapist for so many years, and shout out to the therapists out there because they're amazing. Um, so no, I'm really glad. I'm really, really glad that, you took that break. And how is it going right now after 3 months?
Yes, I already feel so much better. And especially working in a contract role and leaving, even though I was new and leaving when I was newer in a space was really difficult. And deciding to leave Discord was so difficult because I had invested so much care and I still have so much passion. And sometimes you look back and kind of like second guess, well, maybe I should have stuck it out longer. Maybe I should push, push, push. But the top thing is to take a step back and actually reassess how you're feeling inside. And I think a couple of big things here. So each step that I've taken, either from changing my major, changing my career, taking a step back, I've made a pros and cons list that you kind of mentioned. I write down the pros of staying in the situation that I'm in. Sometimes they are necessities like finances, but other things are like I find high value in my work, I enjoy the space I'm in, or the cons of like things I'm not addressing in my life. So my physical well-being has taken a back seat. And so from that pros and cons list, you don't have to just decide, oh, I'm leaving, that's it. Like I am a person that likes to stay in an environment, especially in a supportive environment, as long as I can. And so kind of my advice there is I did learn a lesson kind of like you said, talking to your manager, having a clear path of communication, and being very transparent on it. If you're starting to feel burned out, everybody has different workloads. And if it's a bit too much for you at a time, it is good to talk to your manager. And I think the biggest fear there is rejection of, oh, why are you burned out? You should be doing fine. That's a failure. So I think that's a big thing that people are scared of, is the fear of failure. But you will end up failing if you don't take care of yourself. That's a guarantee, is if you keep running yourself ragged, you will fail. But if you communicate, at least you know you took that step to let them know. And I'm also a person that kept taking things on and taking things on. And plus, like, as I mentioned, I get really excited when I see something I can personally help. I'm like, jump in. I'm like, I want to do it. But then you also have your other responsibilities. So you got to weigh, what are the things that you actually need to get done at work versus what are kind of like side paths that you want to focus on, and talking to your manager. And I know some companies might be more structured with side paths like that, or you taking on more work or less work. But yeah, definitely communication and following your intuition too. If you have a gut feeling and your brain's kind of saying this one thing and you're shutting it down, I think something I learned is to listen to that intuition too. And then another thing is utilizing your company's resources. Even if you're in college right now, there are resources at your college that are provided, like mental health resources. At work, I could have taken an FMLA mental health leave potentially, and I never pushed for that because I didn't want to be seen as, oh, she can't handle it, so she's taking leave. Everybody can use that, and that's why it's there. It's there for you to use. And we don't have a lot of benefits in this society when it comes to work. Some companies are better than others, but I know the US has one of the worst, like maternity leave benefits, for example. So if they are there for you to use, and don't feel guilty. And as long as you're communicating as much as you can and being clear about what's going on, that is the best thing you can do. And another thing that, another piece of advice I have is connect with people, not just directly that you work with every day. Try to connect with people that might be skip levels, or it might be people on other teams that you might tangentially work with, that you can reach out and say, hey, I'm really interested in hearing about your experience, hearing about your projects. And the more people that you meet at work, the better of a impact you'll make, because chances are you're probably awesome and they'll enjoy talking to you and you'll get to learn from them. And that was another thing too, is after I left Discord, I heard that I was actually very valued and I had more opportunities to take the breaks and maybe take other opportunities instead of just saying bye, like I'm leaving. I was too scared of the rejection of failure, of, oh, I need to take some leave. Instead, I'm just like, peace out. So definitely try to use the resources before you peace out. That would be my piece of advice. And talk to as many people as you can, network, because that's what being a part of a team is, right? Is being on the team and talking to everybody. So yeah, I mostly stuck to just like the people I worked with every day and got in like a little pigeonhole when I should have been a butterfly. Be a butterfly, take up space. So that would be kind of what led me to completely leaving certain spaces, was just still weighing the pros and cons, but I didn't use all the resources and talk to as many people as I should have. But overall, I did need to take a career break, especially for some chronic health problems too. Sometimes life will throw you curveballs that you have to deal with, whether it's through family, whether it's through your own personal health, or anything financially, things happen in the world. So sometimes you do need to take a step back to focus on those. But overall, it's good to keep a pulse check on how you're truly feeling, no matter what environment you're in, whether you're in college, whether you're in a workspace. It's really good to have that habit of doing check-ins.
No, I love that. I think I can relate so much in regards to the feelings of have the conversation, right? I was terrified to have the conversation with my manager, to tell him like, okay, look, this is a lot. There's a lot on my plate. There's no way that I can possibly do this, because this is honestly just affecting me in a negative way, right? It was like the failure aspect of it, literally just like you mentioned. I felt like I could take the world, and I was super excited until I couldn't, until I was just like completely burned out. And then just having that conversation, just scared of like being judged and scared of being not valued at work anymore, or there's so many emotions that kind of went through to have those conversations. And one thing that was a really big point that you mentioned was the resources of the companies. Like every school and every company has some type of resources and something that you can use, which is so important to use. Literally what you said. If it's there, like use it because you work 8 hours a day, you work 5 days a week, like you spend more time of during the week at work than doing a lot of other things. And if you have all those breaks, all those resources, all those opportunities that you can do at work, you should take it. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't take their vacation days to the full extent. They'll take, like I love that your company had some mental health like days. That is amazing. I've
Yeah.
never heard of that before. So that is awesome. But just take it. I think a big part that made me actually stay in the company while I was going through burnout was we have woman in STEM basically group within the company, and we have a lot of meetings, usually once a month. And the meetings are so raw and so honest of, okay, I'm a woman and there's an expectation depending on the culture or your age or how whatever it is of you focus on the house, you focus on the kids, you focus on this, you focus on that, but you also working full time, and that's like huge. That's two full-time jobs at that point, right? So there's so many raw and like just honest conversations in this group about everything that us women go through that is very different than men. No matter what, will forever be different than men. um that kind of put me in check a little bit of like, okay, I'm not the only one. It's literally every single woman in this company mentioning some things that I can relate to. And they're all very open and very much like, hey, do you need help? We would talk about it. Mention to your manager, have those conversations, use the time off. And it took me a little bit of time, a couple of days to process everything. And then I was like, okay, cool. Had the conversation with my manager, took some things off my plate, reorganize my own personal life. I think your mental health and your mind is so strong and so powerful that if you're burned down there, especially, I could see, the negative impact on my physical body and on everything else in life, right? Everything is connected, right? Your full body is connected, your emotions, your physical body, your mind. So, super important point that you mentioned with the resources. Like everyone should use all the resources available. They are there for a reason. And just don't be afraid. And all the negative emotions that we go through when trying to make those tough decisions, somehow trying to find a way to put all the negative emotions to the side, make the pros and cons list, which I'm big on that. That's my whole life. Every decision I make, if it's some small stuff sometimes, I'm like, okay, pros and cons. And usually for the most part, if your intuition, like you mentioned, is saying something to you, as soon as you put everything on a piece of paper in front of you, the intuition is always right, and it just makes sense to jump and like take that path. So I'm glad you listened to your intuition, that you jumped and you did that big change for yourself. I'm glad that after 3 months you're doing better, that you feel better, that you're able to put yourself first after years of just fully focusing so much on our career. Because that having a full-time job and having a job that we love and we're passionate about it and that we're very excited, it's awesome, but we have to figure out how to balance, right? One thing my therapist always likes to say that I mention to everyone is how our lives, we have a bunch of different buckets. We have a bucket for ourselves, for our friends, for our family, for our hobbies, for work, and we need to add a little bit into every single bucket. And if one bucket is too full, there's no space for the other ones, right? And that I take that to the ground until I die with me. That's the most important sentence that I think about every single week. I'm like, okay, I have these buckets. How much love am I putting to every single bucket? Because usually work takes the most, and you forget about the other buckets a little bit sometimes. So life is just hard. It's hard to make a balance, but I always try to keep that in mind. But at the same time, I'm glad. I'm happy. Really happy for you, truly. On making the big change, the big step. It's huge. It took a lot of courage. Literally so much courage. It's crazy. Like in the best way. So
And
I'm
then
excited.
sometimes staying somewhere is more comfortable, or staying in a situation is more comfortable than being uncomfortable and making a change. Even that,
Mhm.
if that's not leaving somewhere but shifting something in your situation, even though something can be so hard, it's easier to just stay in it sometimes. So you have to do the hard thing sometimes.
Yeah. Everyone gets comfortable. There's always a part of life that's comfortable, and we only grow from the uncomfortable parts. That's what I tell everyone.
Sadly, but
Literally.
truly.
Yeah, it is. It's like if you just stay comfortable and cruising, there's a growth that you're probably missing out on. And as soon as your intuition started throwing yourself into the most uncomfortable, it's usually the most uncomfortable parts. You just grow so much and you learn so much and you become a whole different, better version of yourself. So that is super exciting. And now that you've been 3 months on this break, is there any future plans for careers? Anything you want to do different? Completely change your path or go back to a path? Anything going in your mind for what the future could look like?
Yeah. So another thing that you mentioned is being a woman and thinking about like what you want to do. Do you want to have a family? Sometimes, for example, your spouse might need to move somewhere else. Like right now, I'm in the middle of Wisconsin, and I can't, or I could. It's up to you what you want to do. But if I wanted to go back into a certain industry, a lot of them now are in New York or California. So kind of weighing out, okay, where do I want to be, and how can I match my career goals in that type of space? And so right now, I'm just starting to come back to life, and I kind of watered my flowers. So my little petals are coming out, my little stems are coming out, and I'm kind of looking at the gaming industry around here. I know there's like a Wisconsin Games Alliance, I believe. I just joined that organization and I haven't been to any events yet, but I want to start getting involved. So I'm kind of interested in seeing what's going on in that industry, but I'm still also open to trust and safety, just not direct content exposure anymore. Because sometimes you find out there's certain things that is definitely on your no list, and or something that you might even be good at. I mean, I know I'm good at it, but it's just I'll burn out. So keeping in mind that, so kind of still interested in either communications, gaming, trust and safety. So now I know what I like, but I don't know what career opportunities there are, since a lot of it's super competitive, and unfortunately there's a lot of layoffs in these spheres. There's a lot of people in really crappy situations in the sphere. So I'm trying to, and I'm calling it a sphere. I like imagine things as little spheres floating around that I'm grabbing. I'm like, okay, how's trust and safety looking? How's like communications and gaming and IT? So I'm like holding these. I'm like, what can open in this sphere? What can I be involved in? In my next role, I wouldn't mind being an individual contributor again, depending on what the role is, but I'm also interested in diving into project management fully. So I'm thinking of getting the certification for that too next. So
That's awesome. I love the little spheres. I kind of think of like in my mind the word is different, but the way is the same thing. I think of little bubbles. I'm always like, okay, the little bubbles of literally what you mentioned, like every single bubble is one word, and then there's so many different things in those bubbles. And I even have pictures that I draw on my computer of like different bubbles and trying to connect. So that's cool. I just love that how like you connected the dots in the same way in my brain. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one thinking this way. Um, so that's
yes,
amazing.
bubbles, spheres. I'm like,
Yeah.
nobody knows what a sphere is. I made this word up. So here you go. Here's your sphere, and they're float bubbles. You
Yeah.
get it.
Exactly. No, I love that. And I love that now literally what you mentioned. I think that even with the break, you get a little bit of more clarity of, okay, what worked before, what didn't work, what got me to the point of burning out, which I don't want to get there before. So this is a big no for my future. And now you have all these different opportunities ahead of you. And yes, it's a rough industry right now. It's a rough time, literally where you mentioned like the layoffs and everything going on. It's tough out here, but at the same time, I'm sure something is gonna come. Really, really, really hope that is a position in a career path that you're gonna love, which I'm pretty sure you will, since now you know exactly what your interests are and what is the big things that you're not gonna go for. So that is amazing. That is awesome. Um, also I know, I lived in Minnesota, so I know how Minnesota, Wisconsin, it's just different in the tech world a little bit there. So
There's not as much, but there's still some things.
oh yeah.
But yeah, a lot of companies are getting rid of remote or just not in person. So gotta work with what's around us. Or who
Oh
knows?
yeah.
Maybe one day I'll have an opportunity and we'll move again. But it is tough after you buy a house and try to put down some roots. And the longer you're alive and the more things you settle down with, the harder it is to just pick it all up and move. So We'll see.
Definitely.
And I'm open
Definitely.
to like other industries too, kind of like trust and safety. I didn't even know it was a thing. Now I'm a professional in it. Maybe there's another industry I can bring all these skills to that I could be valuable in that I don't know about yet. You just, that would be a top thing is you might have an idea of what your career will be, but always keep an eye out for different types of opportunities.
No, I love that. And I think that that's a big thing. Like with trust and safety and that experience that you had, and even with like the information technology, every single industry needs those. It doesn't matter if it's in the healthcare industry, if it's hospitality, if it's, the technical world, they all need safety and trust. They all need information technology. It's something so big and so broad that you can literally jump into any direction. Um, and sometimes a random door just pops up in front of you and you're like, "Hey, this is very different. Didn't even think about that." And you just kind of jump on and it starts something completely new. And you learn that there's another little bubble now that of something that is interesting to you. So that's exciting. I'm glad that you're having this moment for yourself, truly, so that you can get excited for the next thing again without being burned out. And that's awesome. I'm happy. That's cool. That's amazing.
Thanks, Natalie. And I want to
Of
add one
course.
last anecdote about that. I
Yeah.
actually reached at talking to other people that you might work with or might be above you. I didn't reach out to the former director of Trust and Safety, Brittany Moss, until after I left Discord. And then I started slightly having a mentorship relationship with her. And she mentioned that she took a career break, I think for a year or two. And she had a few recommendations that I will tell you. So keeping your resume updated, making sure you have those impactful things that you were involved in on there. Numbers are good. I find that's really hard in certain fields to say, oh, I improved company budget by 5% with this project. It's really hard, but that's what companies like to see. A lot of the time is your direct impact to the company. Another is volunteering opportunities. She mentioned that she volunteered, and I also am looking to volunteer too. And something I was looking at the cat shelter near me, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna adopt every cat if I go in there. There's like a farm sanctuary, so volunteering is another good one if you're taking a career break. And yeah, just keeping your horizons open and kind of keeping olive branches out with people that you might have gone to school with, that you might have worked with before, not just closing yourself off like, okay, I'm taking a career break, so that's it, kind of keeping that open. So
Well, that's amazing. That is so cool that now she's your mentor, and that she also took a career break, which and that's something else. I feel like sometimes we think we're taking such a crazy and big decision that it's sometimes more normal than what we think of, that a lot more people do around us. It's just not talked enough, right? Taking career breaks are not talked enough. Completely changing from one career path to something completely different is not talked enough. And a lot of people I feel like are out there having those thoughts, having those intuitions, and just wanting to make those jumps, but they don't know who to relate to. They don't know who to have those conversations, who to become their mentors. So I'm glad that you are here, kind of also open it up the doors for those conversations. Just showing people like, okay, I went through this career path. I went through a STEM education. I completely changed my major, going from one school to another. I'm taking a career break, and the future is still super bright, no matter, every single change or step that you took. Um, so that's amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. I love it. It's very different, very unique, very your story, which is amazing. And to close off, is there any other insights, anything else that you would like to share about, everything that you've learned so far in this journey of life?
any other insights? Yeah, I'll summarize it. Definitely stay connected to your past alumni, people you've worked with before, even reaching out to other people on LinkedIn. I know everything's really competitive and it can feel so embarrassing to poke someone and be like, hey, what is your life like day to day? Do you mind chatting with me? That would be a huge thing, especially if you're an aspiring college grad or have graduated recently. It's really good to keep in communication. And yeah, my top tip is be yourself. I know that jumping from, I was going to mention too that through college I worked in food service. And so you'll learn things about yourself in every step, kind of like, okay, I have these boundaries, or people might treat me this way here. There's a language in this environment, but remembering to stay true to yourself, keep your boundaries and be firm, but also be open to new opportunities. And then learning the corporate lingo. A big thing too is to stay professional in these environments. You have to be yourself, but there's also that language that you'll learn as you go from each job that you need to kind of adapt to in each location. But be yourself, stick to your intuition, and if you enjoy something or are passionate about it, try to follow it the best you can, even if it's competitive or hard to break into, because you can do it and you're awesome.
I love that. And no, the lingo was a big one too that you mentioned right now at the end. It's yes, that balance of staying true to yourself, but also being professional and the way that you talk and the words that you use, but fully trying to have your own personality. That's a whole
So
nother
hard.
thing. Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to keep it balanced. My husband always jokes about how sometimes he hear me in a meeting at work, and then I have this apparently even the tone of voice sometimes changes where it's like, okay, you're very like professional mindset. And then when I talk to him is a completely different way. Like I'm a whole different person apparently. I don't know. I cannot differentiate because to me I'm like, I'm just being myself. It depends who I'm talking to. But yeah, apparently the lingo kind of flips a little bit depending on who you're talking to, what environment, what company even. Some companies are way more laid back, some others are not. So that's funny. That's a funny comment that you made of like it just popped up my mind with like my husband's comments of you're a whole different person at work. I'm like,
Like, who is
am I?
she?
Yeah, literally. Like,
It's work
am I
me. Hello.
really? Even on text messages, apparently, I'm very different, which is a whole
That's so
different type of
funny.
communication of, when you're talking to someone face to face, when you're talking on the phone, when you're texting, when I email, it's also many different types of communication, but it's still you in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's funny. Good. I appreciate that comment. I think all of us go kind of through that too, trying to figure it out. Okay, how can I be me, but also be me in a professional way, be me in a more layoff way, depending on the environment and the person you're talking to. So that is
Yeah.
amazing.
Don't lose yourself in it.
Literally, no, for sure. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, appreciate you taking your time, you sharing your story, your background. Very excited to hear how everything started, all the changes in between, and especially what the future look like. I think that's what I'm the most excited about. Keep me updated with everything. Let me know if you need help with anything. Uh, like you said, you're really good now at networking with people, and LinkedIn is a big one. Poke people, that's a big one. As I always say, just go and bother everyone around you. That's kind of how I do it. But no, I'm super excited for what the future holds. Really excited and really proud of you for taking the break from having this courage that you had. Honestly, that's huge. That's really, really huge. That touches with me very personally. So that's why I'm like, wow, that was a big one. And I'm pretty sure some other people are gonna be able to relate it. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for listening today to Skylar Hoover here sharing all of her story, her beautiful background. If you enjoyed this episode, please just follow, subscribe, all of the social media fun things. All the links gonna be in the description below. We're gonna have a lot more guests coming up. All the posts will be every other Monday for us. So stay tuned and bye for now. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.